She was the world's most iconic blonde bombshell, but beneath the spotlight, Marilyn Monroe was a woman who believed deeply in love. From her quiet first ceremony at just 16, to her high-profile union with baseball legend Joe DiMaggio, to her final vow with playwright Arthur Miller, each wedding dress told a story of hope, glamour, and heartbreak. Let's uncover the style behind her 3 wedding day looks and what they revealed about the woman behind the fame. So, if new in my channel, please subscribe. 1. Marilyn Monroe's first wedding, 1942. Before the world knew her as Marilyn Monroe, she was Norma Jeane, a 16-year-old girl searching for stability. At just 16 years old, Norma Jeane Baker found herself at a crossroads. Her mother, struggling with mental illness, had been institutionalized. And with no stable family left, Norma faced the very real possibility of being sent back into foster care. But then came James Dougherty, a quiet, responsible 21-year-old neighbor. Their marriage wasn't the product of whirlwind romance or Hollywood gossip. It was a practical decision, made partly to give Norma Jeane a stable home and to keep her from the uncertainties of the system. They married on June 19, 1942, in a small private ceremony in Van Nuys, California. And the dress? Nothing like the sparkling gowns she'd wear in years to come. No Givenchy, no Dior, no diamonds. Just a simple cream-colored rayon gown with long sleeves, a high neckline, and a softly flowing A-line skirt. It was modest, traditional, quietly lovely. Her hair, parted neatly and pinned back, matched the tone of the day, uncomplicated and innocent. She wore a delicate veil, borrowed for the occasion, and carried a small bouquet of fresh flowers. There were no flashing cameras, no red carpet, just a teenage girl in a modest dress, stepping into adulthood too soon. The wedding photos, the black and white, softly lit, capture a version of Marilyn the world would never quite see again. 2. Marilyn Monroe and Joe DiMaggio, elegance, fame. By 1954, Norma Jeane had vanished, and in her place stood Marilyn Monroe, the most desired woman on the planet. And when Marilyn walked into her second wedding, it was no longer about escaping her past. It was about trying to build a future with someone who adored her, but never quite understood her. She married Joe DiMaggio, the all-American baseball legend, on January 14, 1954, in a small civil ceremony at San Francisco City Hall. There was no cathedral, no orchestra, and yet the world watched. But what Marilyn wore that day, it wasn't white, and it wasn't what Hollywood expected. She chose a dark brown wool suit designed by the legendary Norman Norell, the same designer who would later be called the first American couturier. The suit was simple, but powerful. It featured a fitted silhouette, 3/4 sleeves, and a structured white fur collar that softened the neckline. Her accessories were just as intentional: black heels, black gloves, a small bouquet of white orchids, and a chic veiled fascinator perched delicately on her platinum blonde curls. There was no veil cascading down her back, no diamonds dripping from her ears. Instead, Marilyn looked every bit the sophisticated, elegant woman, no longer a wide-eyed girl, but someone trying to define herself outside the studio's control. This was her second chance at love, and she dressed like she meant it. But behind the elegance was a growing tension. Joe DiMaggio loved Marilyn deeply, but he wanted the woman, not the spectacle. He hated the crowds, the cameras, and most of all, he hated sharing her with the world. Just 9 months later, after the now famous subway grate scene from The 7-Year Itch, where Marilyn's white dress billowed for millions to see, their marriage crumbled under the pressure. In October 1954, Marilyn filed for divorce, citing mental cruelty. But that moment, when they stood in City Hall, her in that elegant chocolate brown suit, him in a dark tie, captured a rare glimpse of 2 American icons trying to find peace in each other. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was real. And that suit, quiet, chic, unforgettable, just like the woman who wore it. 3. Marilyn Monroe and Arthur Miller. By 1956, Marilyn Monroe had married fame, survived heartbreak, and was now chasing something deeper. When she fell in love with Arthur Miller, the Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, the world was shocked. She was Hollywood's blonde bombshell. He was the quiet intellectual from Brooklyn, but somehow they fit. Their wedding wasn't grand or glittering, it was deeply personal. They were married twice, first in a quiet civil ceremony on June 29, 1956, in White Plains, New York. Then again 2 days later in a traditional Jewish ceremony where Marilyn officially converted to Judaism. And what she wore, not a single designer's name has ever become attached to it, because that was never the point. For the religious ceremony, Marilyn wore a soft beige sheath-style dress. The cut was elegant but understated, a boat neckline, 3/4 sleeves, a slightly nipped waist, and delicate lace detailing along the edges. There was no veil, no tiara, just white flowers pinned into her swept-up hair. Her makeup? Softer. Her smile? More sincere. This was not the Marilyn of movie premieres or billboards. This was a woman who wanted to be understood, to be seen beyond the myth. And in Miller, she thought she'd found that. He nicknamed her Magda in his journal, a name he used for the private Marilyn no one else knew. He wrote, "I'm in love with her, not the actress, but the girl." Their ceremony photos feel different. There's no Hollywood filter and just sunlight, fabric, and simplicity. Her dress seemed to reflect that, calm, romantic, and grounded, but the world wasn't ready to let Marilyn slow down. The pressures of being Marilyn Monroe, of constant filming, media scrutiny, and personal trauma eventually chipped away at their bond. Though they stayed married for 5 years, longer than her other unions, by 1961, they had quietly divorced. Still, that day in 1956 remains one of the few times Marilyn truly looked peaceful, not because of jewels, not because of status, but because for a brief moment she believed love might be enough. And her dress, a whisper of elegance that spoke louder than any headline ever could. They weren't just wedding dresses, they were glimpses into Marilyn's heart, stitched in silk and whispers of romance. If you love uncovering the fashion history of old Hollywood's most iconic women, subscribe to Clara Marie for more timeless elegance, where every dress tells a deeper story.